So today we're going to talk about a couple beginner tips, and honestly, it could be like intermediate tips or even advanced users can benefit from this. So we're going to talk about side chaining, EQing, compression, saturation, and then the bonus tip would be automation. So I'll give you a rundown how those things can be used when structuring your track, because all these tips are going to be used while you're creating a track, while you're composing, right? So let's go ahead and dive in. It's going to be a good time. It's going to be good for you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I prepared something. Honestly, it's a quick thing. It was like 15 minutes, guys. But this is going to demonstrate how to apply all those techniques, right? Sidechain, EQ, etc. As you can already see here, there's some already. I live in a Mexican household, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know if you guys heard that. That shit sounded like a pterodactyl, but we're setting up tables for the menudo. All right, guys, I took care of the menudo noises downstairs. So as I was saying, this is a quick demo track that I just made, quick transitions, just to show you how to apply those techniques. Let me go ahead and play it so you guys can hear it.
I wanna feel it. Yeah. I wanna see it.
I wanna see it too. I wanna see it. So there's a lot going on there, so we're going to break it down step at a time. So there's going to be two ways of side chaining, right? I want to go ahead and I group two of these instruments, right? The lead and the bass, because they're using the same side chain. So there's two ways. One, you could use an Ableton compressor, right? So stock or any type of compressor that you have in your DAW. The first thing you want to do here is you're going to go and obviously turn it on because you need those things. It's going to look like this at first, so just click this down arrow, and then you're going to click sidechain, right? Once you do that, you route it to your kick, typically. You could do this as other effects and route it to other things, but if you're going to do it for house music, for example, you want to do it to the kick, right? So I'm going to route it to the kick. I spelled kick wrong. Wonderful. I'm human, guys, okay? Please. What you want to do is mess with the threshold a little bit, mess with the gain, and you're going to hear what it does. So this is without. This is with. You see how it ducks? That's what you want. So essentially what we're doing here is we want to make room for the kick, right? So the kick and the transient, everything kicks and punches through. Because in house music and dance music, and honestly reggaeton, anything you do, is the kick is really important. You really need that. That's one way of doing it. The second way of doing it is by using volume shapers, LFO tool. What's happening is that you're just ducking down the volume in that certain area, right? So as you can see here, I have it ducked down at 11, right? And for some context, guys, anything in blue is volume. So it's showing that, hey, everything in blue is the volume level. Is it high or is it low, right? If I bring it down, the volume level is going to be lower. If I bring it up, the volume level is going to be higher. So we duck it here. Why am I ducking in at 11? That's a great question that nobody asked. The reason I'm doing that is I'm going down here to my kick, right? The Croco Disrespectful kick coming out in the new pack, Casa Volume 1. And you can see here, I cut off everything at 11, right? So essentially, I'm making room for the bass. And so let's hear it with and without the sidechain. I'm going to use the LFO tool for this example. So let me get rid of this compressor. This is how it's going to sound like without the sidechain. And you're going to see how muddy it sounds. Like the kick's not really pushing through all the way. Let's go ahead and see. Just caca, clashing. You don't want that. Now when you add it with just makes a world of a difference, guys. You can even use this as an effect or a mixing technique, and it's important that you do that, like all your instruments that you feel are going to get in the way. That way that the kick pushes through and everybody's dancing their ass off at Countdown New Year's Eve and having a great time. All right, this next part we're going to be talking about saturation. Saturation is key, guys. It's going to add those harmonic frequencies in your track that's going to make it sound more alive, more present. And in this case, I'm going to show you how to do it with the bass, right? There's a couple things that I like to do. I'm going to give you a couple of my tips from just stock Ableton plugins, but you can use anything from like Fab Filter, right? They have, I think, the Saturn. There's different types of plugins, right? Like Decapitator, I think, from Sound Toys. But all you need is stock plugins from Ableton. That's all you need, guys. They're amazing. Check this out. One of my favorite things to use is a drum bus. So if you literally just go up here and put drum bus, just drag in the stock no preset drum bus, you can get away with a lot, guys. We'll start off with that one first. This is how the bass sounds like with no saturation whatsoever, right? Kind of a boring sitch, but check this out. Fat, right? This also has a little bit of compression, which I'll get to in just a second, but I really want to stress on the importance of saturation and really having things come to life and really just pushing the bass or any instrument and making it sound warm and alive, right? There's also saturator within Ableton. It pretty much does the same thing as the other saturators that you have. You see how it sounds present? I mean, if you just apply this concept through like pretty much any instrument that you have, it's going to make you sound better. All right, guys, the next piece we're going to talk about is compression. Compression is really important. It's really going to tame those peaks and valleys in the instrument that you're using. But there's going to be two types of compression, right? There's downward, which is taming, and then upward, which is pushing up, right? There's a regular compressor that Ableton has, which is awesome. And then there's OTT, over-the-top compression, which utilizes both upward and downward compression, which is really cool. But I'm going to give you some examples on how that makes a difference when you use it in your bass, for example. So I'm going to use that same bass line that we had, which it's not playing. Now it is. This is just the compressor by itself, right? But without it, look how it just sounds all over the place and not as tight. But if you bring it down here, you can really just feel the difference. The settings that I typically use is 4:1. You can mess with the attack to your liking. Pretty much any of these ratios you can. But a rule of thumb is I like to put on auto if you're not comfortable with the release type. So that's one type. On this one in particular, I use over the top just to really get a tame sound, but I kind of want both angles, upward and downward. I put it about 50% here, and you just mess with the settings here, right? Like this is more upward, and then the brown piece or purple, whatever color it is going to be a downward compression. The reason I use drum bus, it also has a compressor. So if you look here, it's a very subtle difference, but it makes a difference in your track, guys. So it just sounds fat. It's a beautiful thing. And you can use this across any instruments, leads, bass, even vocals, whatever it might be, right? This is universal in music production. So the next tip is going to be EQ. So the way we're going to talk about EQ today is more of like a summary, right? Like essentially, we want to make room for everything in the mix, right? We want to make room for the bass, we want to make room for the leads, for the vocals. And EQ is a great tool to make space within the track because we only have so much information within the track that we can use, right? There's only so much room that we can play with. Let me give you some general guidelines here. Like for a bass, for example, we want to cut out all the high end, right? We don't need a high end for the bass. It's only for the lows, right? See? We only need that. That's all we need for the bass. Also for leads, you want to take out all the low end. You don't need low end because then what's going to happen is that we have the bass and kicking everything on the low end. And then we have a lead in the low end. It's going to sound all muddy and it's going to be distorted and it's going to sound disgusting. We don't want those things. I did that for the lead too, right? We don't need all that stuff because it's going to clash with the bass. So just remove it. Now, if you really want to get nice with it, I like to use the Pro Q3 from FabFilter. I'm not sponsored by them, of course, or any of these plugins that I'm using. What you can do here is use a dynamic EQ. And what's really cool about that is that as things peak, the dynamic EQ will bring those frequencies down. And so if you look here, just so you can hear those little frequencies, we wanted to get rid of that. I heard that from the beginning. I was like, it's a little chiming. It makes the mix sound really harsh and gross, right? We don't want those things either. So what I did is I put a dynamic EQ on here to remove that sound. Let's start from scratch here. So what you want to do is you want to filter up and hear any sounds you want to get rid of that are harsh like this. Like that, right? We don't want that. That's really nasty. So we'll go down here. We're going to make dynamic and just bring this down. And it gets rid of those harsh frequencies when it peaks, not throughout the entire time, because with the Ableton compressor, for example, you're ducking down the low end all the time. But with this, you can duck down only when needed, which is really, really cool. And lastly, we're going to talk about automation. Automation is a great way to keep your listeners engaged. For this demonstration, I'm using the Casa Volume 1 pack that's going to be coming out, and it's going to be called Morenita Loca. It's just like a pluck kind of a sound. So what I did is I use this filter here, and I automated that, right? So as the track builds up, the filter opens, and then as the drop kicks in, the filter's going to close. So let's go ahead and check that out. I filtered it so you guys can hear it better. You'll see this little filter not moving. So that's one way of using it. And another way of using it is by using like a reverb or like a build-up technique. For example, I'm using the Endless Smile here by Data Life. Not sponsored by them as well. I just routed the automation to the intensity. And as you can see here, this builds up. I'll put it at 100 just so you can see the extreme version of it, right?
I wanna see.
Yeah! All right! Drops down to nothing. That gets me every time. I hope that was helpful. Get to producing, be consistent. Really just apply these techniques. It's really going to make a difference in your music, especially if you're just starting out. Just get in the habit of the EQing, side chaining, saturation, compression, and so forth. And automation, it's always a good thing. If you found this useful, please consider following us. Just go ahead and click down below. I want to leave you with one last thing too. I want to bless you guys. If you click on the link below, I have a free pack, right? It's completely free. There's no by the way. There's no email spamming. Download, it's free. It has Serum presets, got some drums, some samples. It's a reggaeton pack, but I'll upload the house one soon. All right, guys, take care.